Hello, everybody. Welcome in. I am so glad you are here. Listen, if you're joining live, please drop your name in the comments. And if you're watching the replay, whether it's on YouTube or within our Nourishment Flow online community, I just want to say welcome. Everything I'm covering tonight applies whether you found me 5 minutes ago or you've been inside of our circle online community for months, okay? Before I get into tonight, I want to name the room properly. Some of you are in perimenopause. Hormones are fluctuating. Some days feel manageable and some days they don't. You're still cycling or cycling irregularly, and your body feels like it's running two operating systems at once. Some of you are in menopause. The transition has happened. Estrogen has settled at a lower floor, and you may have found that even after the acute symptoms eased, something still feels off in your gut, your sleep, maybe your weight, maybe your energy. Tonight's session is for both of you, okay? Because what I'm going to cover, y'all, what your gut is doing between 10 p.m. and 4 a.m., and why most women, or a lot of women, in this transition or disrupting it without even knowing. This operates across the full picture. Now, the details shift slightly by stage, and I'll name those distinctions though as we go. So, here's the reframe I want to start with. Most of us think about gut health as a daytime conversation, what we eat, how we digest, whether we're bloated after lunch, the energy or the afternoon energy crash, right? Or maybe the 3 p.m. hunger. We are not talking about any of that today, okay? This evening, we're talking about what happens after the kitchen closes, after the house goes quiet, while you are asleep or trying to be asleep, right? Because listen, y'all, your gut does not stop working when you do. It shifts into a completely different mode, and whether that mode runs cleanly or gets disrupted depends almost entirely on what you did in the hours before you went to bed. So y'all, that is what we're going to be talking about this evening, okay? That's what we're covering this evening. My daughter's in a video, and that's perfectly fine. So let's get into it, y'all, okay? I want to introduce you to something called the migrating motor complex. So many women have never heard of it, which is part of the problem, okay? The migrating motor complex, we'll just say the MMC, is your gut's overnight cleaning crew. It's a series of electrical waves that move through your small intestine in cycles, sweeping debris, undigested material, bacterial buildup through and out of the small intestine. I want you to think of it as the gut's version of a maintenance shift. The crew that comes in after everyone leaves and cleans the building. Here's the critical piece. The MMC only activates in a fasted state. It cannot run while you are digesting, okay? The moment food enters the system, the MMC pauses when digestion is complete and the gut is clear. The MMC starts its cycle again. Now, each cycle takes roughly 90 to 120 minutes, okay? Now, this matters enormously in perimenopause and menopause, and y'all, here is why. Estrogen has a direct effect on gut motility. As estrogen declines, whether that's the fluctuation of perimenopause or the lower floor of menopause, gut motility slows. The MMC becomes less efficient, the cleaning cycles take longer, happens less regularly, or get interrupted more easily. The clinical result of a chronically disrupted MMC is bacterial overgrowth in the small intestine, what most of you know as SIBO, SIBO. And I want to be clear about something here. A significant portion of the bloating, the distension, and digestive discomfort that women in this transition attribute to food, to specific foods, to suddenly developing intolerances, could actually be a motility issue. It is the MMC not doing its job overnight, and the food is getting the blame. Okay? So that's the first thing happening in your gut between 10 p.m. and 4 a.m. The second is the microbiome repair window. Microbiome repair window. Your gut bacteria are most active overnight. The bacterial communities that govern estrogen clearance, neurotransmitter production, your serotonin, your GABA, and inflammation regulation are doing the bulk of their work while you sleep. Okay? And specifically for the women in this room who are with me tonight, the estrobolome is working overnight. Now, for any of you or anyone who's new to that word estrobolome, basically it is the specific community of gut bacteria that governs whether used estrogen gets cleared from the body or gets repackaged and sent back into circulation. The bacterial community is working on what you feed or what you fed it at night. Okay, that's it. Whatever substrate you gave it in your last meal is what it has to work with during the most metabolically active window of the next 12 hours. That's the picture. Your gut is running a cleaning cycle and a repair cycle simultaneously, and both of them depend on decisions you made before 8 p.m. Okay. Now, in perimenopause, a disrupted overnight repair window shows up as worsening hormonal symptoms, more bloating, more estrogen dominant patterns, more disrupted sleep as the cycle continues. In menopause, the stakes shift slightly. Your body is producing less estrogen than it was, which means that what it does produce needs to be cleared cleanly, efficiently, because there isn't excess to buffer disrupted clearance. The margin for a poorly functioning estrobolome is smaller in menopause. The overnight nourishment window becomes more important in menopause, not less. Okay, so that's what's supposed to happen. Let me tell you what's actually happening for so many women that I work with anyway, okay? And you may be able to relate to some of this. The first and most common disruptor is late eating. Anything eaten after 8 p.m. delays MMC activation. The gut is still digesting. The cleaning cycle cannot start. And if you are eating at 9 p.m., which a lot of professional women are, okay, because dinner is the last thing that happens after everything else, you may be going to sleep before your gut has even finished phase 1 of the repair window. This is not, y'all, this is not about willpower or discipline. I want to make sure you understand that. This is physiology, okay? The gut cannot clean and digest simultaneously. If you are asking it to do both, it will always prioritize digestion first. The second disruptor is pattern specific, and this is where I want you to pay attention to your own pattern, okay? I want you to really just listen in, okay? If you are cortisol wired, high sugar foods or alcohol in the evening will spike cortisol in the early hours of the morning, typically around 2 a.m. That cortisol spike interrupts the repair window. It's also why cortisol wired women tend to wake between 2 and 4 a.m. Not because of a sleep problem, but because of an evening food choice that created a cortisol response overnight. If you are insulin inflamed, now y'all take the quiz if you don't know what I'm talking about. Refined carbohydrates at dinner drive overnight glucose variability. Your gut is operating in a pro-inflammatory biochemical environment for the entire repair window. The bacterial communities trying to do overnight maintenance are working against an inflammatory signal you set in motion, say around 7 p.m. If you are estrogen stuck, low fiber evening meals leave the estrobolome without the substrate it needs. It cannot do its clearance work without fiber. And the result, estrogen that should have been cleared gets repackaged and recirculated. And you wake up the next morning with a higher circulating estrogen load than, when you went to sleep. Okay? If you are T3 downregulated, and I know some of you have been told not to eat after a certain time, and we're going to address that in just a moment. Undereating at dinner suppresses overnight T3 conversion. Your thyroid does significant repair and conversion work in sleep. Insufficient caloric substrate at dinner is a direct signal to downregulate that process. Eating less at night is not always the safer choice, okay? And last, if you are estrobolome disrupted, the bacterial diversity that your overnight clearance process depends on is already compromised. Late alcohol, even one glass, is a direct hit on lactobacillus and bifidobacterium populations. And the effect isn't just tonight, y'all. Alcohol-related microbiome disruption compounds over days. The third disruptor, and this one is specific to the transition that you are in, is the loss of progesterone and declining melatonin. Progesterone has a direct sedative effect. It supports deep restorative sleep, which is exactly the sleep architecture that allows the MMC to run its full repair cycle. In perimenopause, progesterone fluctuates. Some nights the MMC gets a full run, and some nights it does not. In menopause, the progesterone floor is gone. That sedative buffer is no longer available, which means the environmental conditions for overnight gut repair are structurally different than they were, say, in your 30s. Now, this is not a deficiency. It is a change in context. And it means the levers that you do have control over, anyway, specifically your evening nourishment, carry more weight than they used to. Melatonin declines in parallel, and melatonin does more than regulate sleep. It has direct antioxidant activity in the gut lining. Its decline is part of why gut barrier integrity becomes a more active concern in this transition. Now, I want to give you something practical, okay? Something practical before we move into the wind down close. The one habit that so many women in perimenopause and in menopause are missing at dinner. And that is a targeted prebiotic fiber serve. Now, to supplement y'all, a food. Now, here's what that means clinically, okay? Prebiotic fiber, the kind that's found in foods like leeks, onion, garlic, asparagus, cooked and cooled potatoes, green bananas, and chicory root is the substrate that feeds your estrobolome. It is what the bacterial communities governing overnight estrogen clearance actually need to do their work. When you eat prebiotic fiber at dinner, especially or specifically, you are delivering substrate to the estrobolome at the beginning of its most active window. Not at breakfast, not at lunch, at the meal that immediately precedes the repair shift. There is a second benefit, y'all. There's a second benefit. Adequate fiber at dinner supports MMC activation by helping the gut complete digestion efficiently, moving the process through so the cleaning cycle can begin sooner. I'm getting messages while I'm talking. And for insulin inflamed and cortisol wired women specifically, fiber at dinner buffers overnight glucose variability. It slows the glucose response from the rest of the meal and prevents the blood sugar dip that triggers that 2 a.m. cortisol spike. Okay. So what does this look like practically? That is the question. What does this look like practically? Y'all, this is it's not a protocol, okay? It's not a prescription. It is a leak in your dinner. A handful of asparagus, roasted garlic as a base for your sauce. A tablespoon of inulin powder stirred into a warm broth before bed. And for so many women, that works well, though. If you have a known SIBO, SIBO history, please check with your practitioner before adding concentrated inulin. And the reason being is that it can be too aggressive of a substrate for an already overgrown system. Okay, so just put a little note there, a little check mark. It is a small, consistent addition to the meal you are already making. That's it. For women in perimenopause, the impact is hormonal fluctuation smoothing. You are supporting estrogen clearance during a period when that process is already under pressure from irregular cycles and fluctuating progesterone. For women in menopause, okay, the impact is clearance protection. Your body is producing less estrogen. What it does produce needs to leave cleanly. The estrobolome is the primary pathway, okay, for that clearance. Now, feeding it consistently at dinner is one of the most direct levers we have, okay? Y'all, this is not complicated, right? This is not complicated. It's just specific. And specificity is what makes the difference between a gut health habit and a gut health protocol, all right? Now, that's the clinical picture. Now, let's actually use it. Let's actually use this. Everything, y'all, everything I just covered is information your nervous system received, which means it's also information your nervous system is holding. Tight junctions, cortisol windows, estrobolome substrate. That is a lot of clinical input, and your body knows it. Don't get it twisted. It knows. Before you close this out and go to sleep, I want to give your system permission to let that settle, okay? Not going to just leave you out there like that. But here's what I want to know, okay? Are you aware that the parasympathetic state, the rest and digest state, is the same state that activates the MMC? You cannot force the cleaning cycle, ladies. You can only create the conditions for it to begin. Can't force it. So we're going to do that now. All right. So I want you to sit back. If you're lying down, that's fine. So I want you to sit back. I want you to take one slow breath in through your nose. Try to do 4 counts and then hold it gently for 2 counts. And then I want you to blow it out through your mouth for 6 counts. Okay. And I want you to feel free to do that again. All right. And let the exhale be longer than you think it needs to be. Y'all, that extended exhale is a direct signal to the vagus nerve. It tells your gut that the day is over, that digestion can complete, that the cleaning crew can start. Okay? You just did something physiologically meaningful in just a few seconds. Seems like something small, not a big deal, y'all, but it is. Now, before I let you go, one question for the community thread, y'all. Please post it below. What does your evening eating window currently look like? And what's one thing from tonight that you are shifting? Please just drop your answers below. This is where the work compounds, not in the knowing, but in the naming it out loud. Now, if you are watching this and you're not sure which pattern is driving your overnight symptoms, y'all, that is the first thing you want to know what pattern you are right now. The gut hormone quiz is in the description. It will be in the description, okay? Your pattern determines which part of tonight's session matters most for you. That is where you want to start. And I want to thank y'all so much for being here. I will definitely see you next week. And I just want to say good night to everyone. But y'all, once again, start with the quiz.